up a good point, Craig, because the way the club has played to this point, does it push you to a different level of consciousness about what's going to happen and make the team better? I imagine it does. Do you look at a starting pitcher? You look at a right-hand bat? What are you starting to look at?
Yeah, I think we're currently still evaluating. We may have been having a very different conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it's a credit to these guys who have shown up and played and shown a ton of resiliency, battling injuries, overcoming lengthy, trips on the IL, and it's a credit to these guys. Obviously, we have to figure out what lane there is to pick come the deadline, but I think there are a ton of, Alex talks all the time about the great vibes around the team, and I think we're here to enjoy those and keep pushing guys forward.
All right, this is what I want to get into tonight as the Red Sox play the Marlins in Florida. Open over a 3-game series down there, and then they go to New York to play the Yankees. They play there. And what I want to do is I want to compare things Craig Breslow is saying now to what he was saying, a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago. And not just Craig Breslow. We'll throw Alex Cora in the mix as well. 617-779-0985 is the number here on the Baseball Hour. It is a holiday week, which means things can be a little slower. Red Sox were off last night, so I'm happy to report that we will have Trivia Tuesday tonight, as we do every Tuesday, but it's a good night for it. That's coming a little bit later. But what I do want to know, really, is if you're the Red Sox, we all focus on ownership and upper management because, let's face it, they're easy to pick on. At the end of the day, the players are who they are. You're only going to get a certain level of performance out of certain guys. So at the end of the day, you either put together a team that can win or, and contend, or you don't. I think the general feeling around Red Sox or among Red Sox fans regarding the team this year is that the product they were putting on the field was going to be insufficient. Now, that said, as Alex Cora pointed out over the weekend, they've played better than people expected, including themselves. So I told this story last night. I'll tell it again. I heard sort of going into the year, I got mixed messages from people inside the walls at Fenway Park. That's how I'm going to put it. Inside the walls at Fenway Park. And I'm not talking about media people or groundskeepers. I'm talking about people connected to the baseball operation. Mixed messages. Some of them told me, well, we'll get better, but it's not going to be this year. Going to be a tough year, but we'll be okay in the long run. I had other people tell me, we're going to be better than you think. The media is the one that's controlling the message, and the media is putting a message out there that we're going to suck, and we don't think we're going to suck. We think we're going to be better than people think we are. Now, those people turned out to be right so far, but if that's true, I come back to some of the comments that the Red Sox made during the preseason, whether it be Tom Werner or Sam Kennedy or whoever else. Tom Werner said they were going to go full throttle. They didn't. Then Tom Werner said, well, our defense alone cost us 8 or 9 games last year. If we just improve our defense, we will finish with, 87, 88 wins, and we're in the playoff race. Give or take, roughly, they're on that pace. They're a little below that. Although the defense really hasn't been good, but the point nonetheless stands that they're a little bit better than we thought, which brings us to the trade deadline. Shouldn't they add? If you were going to be a team, and if you expected a team that was going to be an 87, 88 win team, you should be prepared to add. I don't think the Red Sox are. I don't think they're interested in adding. Which, again, is a question I have for you if you're a baseball fan or a Red Sox fan. Do you even think they want to add? Because I don't. I think they would just as soon write off this whole season, use it as player development at the big league level, and then come back for next year with a team that they think can actually contend for a playoff spot because of the development of Ceddanne Rafaela and Tanner Houck and Wilyer Abreu, and take whoever else you want off that roster, not to mention the fact that Kyle Teal could compete for a job in spring training or make a contribution next year. You get the idea. They're really playing for next year. Alex Cora, though, is among those people that believe that when you're in it, you add. So you have this push-pull going on inside the organization. And I guess my question for you is, if you lose this series to the Marlins, to the freaking Miami Marlins, who blow, that team sucks. That's one of the worst teams in baseball. I'm going to give you the actual run differential numbers in MLB right now in terms of where the Marlins rank, because they are dreadful. It's one of the worst teams in the entire game. The 4 worst teams in the game right now, based on run differential, are the White Sox, who, by the way, the Red Sox split with in a 4-game series. The Rockies, second worst. The A's. The Marlins. Actually, the Marlins are third worst. This is a team you should pummel in these games in Miami. You should pummel the Marlins. So my question is this. If the Red Sox lose this series, especially after having lost to the San Diego Padres over the weekend, and I don't think the Padres are any great shakes. They're 4 games over. The Red Sox are 5 games over. You could argue certainly that the Padres have better talent, certainly on their roster, than the Red Sox do. And I say argue. I don't think it's really debatable if the Padres are fully healthy, that they have more talent than the Red Sox do. Even so, you got walloped in those first 2 games. Friday and Saturday nights, the Red Sox got their asses kicked. If you now come out and lose to the Marlins, Jimmy Stewart, you tell me, does that validate what Craig Breslow was saying? In other words, we keep sitting here and saying the Red Sox had a good week or 2 weeks. Then they skidded in 1 series against the Padres. But let's say that skid continues. They play poorly into the All-Star break. Doesn't that basically validate what Red Sox ownership and management seemingly wants to do, which is to not add, to just play it out and let it go?
It does, and it's terrible.
So that's the part of it. If I were Alex Cora, I were a fan, and I want to see baseball in the second half of the season that is meaningful, this is the part that would concern me. The market correction, for lack of a better word. The market correction that could be coming this week, right around or leading into the 2 weeks leading into the All-Star break, that prove that the Red Sox really weren't or aren't what they have shown during the last couple of weeks, and that the projections and the metrics and the analytics are all correct. That this is a team that's ultimately going to finish 81-81, that was never worth an investment, and it was just a matter of time before they leveled off again. That is what should scare you this week. Because knowing baseball like we do in this market, usually when you get hot, you cool off. I don't want to say, the good teams might play 500. The bad teams typically start losing and all of a sudden lose 5 out of 7. So is that what we're headed for? And if that does happen, well, then the argument goes out the window and you can't add. Martin in Texas kicks us off tonight. What do you got, Martin?
Hey, Tony, I just want to say a telling point on what they're going to do at the trade deadline is going to happen after Brian Bayo's start. If he has another clunker where he just blows up and has a terrible game and they have to yank him after 2 or 3 innings, and they don't bring up Cooper Criswell to replace him in the rotation and send him down to figure some things out, and they just let him just have terrible games, then they're going to sell. If he has a good game or he has a bad game and they move up Criswell, then that, I think, gives a bigger chance that they're going to buy. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, no, I got you, Martin, because I understand Bayo's sort of an important guy. But let me ask you, deep down, what do you think they want to do?
I think they want him to have a bad game so they can sell.
Okay, right. So isn't that crazy? When you think about it, isn't that nuts? And doesn't that piss you off? Think of that. And I remember years ago, this is what it was like around Fenway Park, that on some level, ownership and management was kind of rooting for the players to fail so they wouldn't have to extend themselves, and the players were really winning to spite ownership and management. That's like one of the great paradoxes that always used to happen over at Fenway Park. Is part of the reason why it was so hard for them to win all those years, because there was this constant infighting and push-pull going on between the uniformed and the non-uniformed personnel. It just never felt like they were on the same page. So again, put it in the context of Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers came out in spring training basically lamenting the start of the season, upset that the Red Sox didn't have enough in the way of talent or pitching prowess, pitching power, that they didn't have enough talent to contend. So before the year even started, Rafael Devers is looking at ownership and management and go, really? You want me to take the field? You want me to try? You want me to produce? For what? To what end? Because we're going to go 81 and 81? I want my numbers to mean something. And the Red Sox are going to look back at him and say, it doesn't matter what your numbers are. We're paying you $31 million a year. Go out and hit. You just do your job. We'll take care of the rest. And I can understand that argument, but to what end? I always thought the whole point was winning. I think you pay a guy so you can win. I think that's the idea. So where the Red Sox are right now, I'm just telling you it's a big couple of weeks coming up. We focus on the good opponents, and you'll get the Yankees later in the week. But in some ways, these series, like the one against the Marlins that begins tonight, in some ways these series are more important. You cannot blow this opportunity. So you want to get some momentum, you want to put pressure on ownership and management, you got to beat the crap out of the Marlins. You have to do that. If you lose, everything Craig Breslow has said will be right. And that comment that we just played, again, if you listen to it, Jimmy, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to actually play it step by step and break down exactly what Craig Breslow was saying when we come back. Because if you think about, if you read between the lines, and it's really not even that subtle, listen to the question and listen to the answer. And if you're uniform personnel or you're a fan and you think you're going to the playoffs, it doesn't sound like the GM of the Red Sox is in your corner. So we'll play that again for you when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
This is the Baseball Hour with Tony Mazz.
Hey, it's Ryan from 128, and one of the things that keeps our customers coming back is our hassle-free guarantee. Good, hearty service from start to finish. Something any good service provider should do for their loyal customers. Consider us for your next project. Visit us online at call128.com.
Hey, it's Felger for Surfside Iced Tea and Vodka, made with stateside vodka and real brewed tea. Surfside is only 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar, and has 0 bubbles. That's right, no carbonation. So it's easy to sip and sip and sip, if you know what I mean.
think we read a little too much into things. Can't say I blame them on that one. They think that we make stuff up, over-dramatize, mountains out of molehills. And I will tell you that all of it is largely true. This is what part of what talk radio is. It's part of the deal. So, but the question is, what do you want to believe and how much of it is really rooted in truth? I think a lot of it is rooted in truth. You know, you go through your life, you day-to-day routines, and half the time you sort of walk away going, well, that was a bullcrap conversation, and most of them are. So I want you to listen again. I'll tell you what, let me do this first. Let me bring in Adam in Pawtucket. And then we'll get back to Craig Breslow and the comment he made to Dave O'Brien in that interview last week. Because frankly, I find the thing to be borderline stunning that he would say this with the team in the middle of a hot streak. And I'm going back to that. The Red Sox didn't have a game last night. But when you stop and really analyze it and think about it, it's stunning. Quickly, Adam in Pawtucket. Adam, what do you got?
What's going on, Tony? Hey, I just wanted to... I'm so sick of the narrative of the playing for next year. We've been playing for the freaking next year for the last 3 or 4 years.
Five years.
5 years. That's what it's ridiculous as the Boston Red Sox. And to be honest with you, I think it was Martin that called first. I not only are they hoping Bayo has a bum outing. I think they hope they lose the series. I think they need an excuse to not go out and buy. And it's I don't know, man. It's just so freaking frustrating. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Adam, it's insane. It's insane. Think of it. Think of how the whole thing works. They have a team. They run a business. They want you to buy tickets. They want you to watch so they can sell you panda crap in plastic bags, buy a brick, celebrate the ballpark, celebrate the Red Sox, wear their stuff with pride. That's what the whole thing is built on. The whole thing is built on winning and getting you to believe that they're going to win. Like we can have a study in sociology and human psychology in it as to the bond or the relationship that exists between fans and the teams that represent their communities and the phenomenon that exists. It's astonishing, but we all know that it's real. Really, it's incredible. And on some level, they are rooting against their own team. So think of that with all they have at stake. Because I agree with you. Part of them looks at it and says, boy, it would be nice if we could get Bayo going. And I think they mean it. But on some level, they look at it and go, you know what? If Bayo goes belly up here, actually, it'll give us the ammunition we need in this debate we're having with our fans as to whether or not we should add to the roster. And it'll let us off the hook. They get the easy way out. And what person doesn't want the easy way out? So when they're sitting in their conference rooms or their Zoom meetings or whatever, somebody's thinking that. Even if it is not verbalized, someone is thinking we'd actually be better off losing 2 out of 3 in this series because we're not going to win the World Series anyway. Meanwhile, we could all cite many teams in many sports that have won championships despite the fact that a team wasn't playing particularly well, whether it had talent or not. Now, as it goes to, or as it relates to Craig Breslow, again, this exchange with Dave O'Brien, we're going to stop and start it. And I'm picking at it. I am. I admit that I am picking at it. But when you listen to the answer, you really would almost rather, I was going to say you'd rather have him lie to you. Given what he believes, you'd rather have him lie to you. But the fact that he wouldn't approach it a different way is really kind of stunning and insulting. Really, part of me thinks like just lie a little and make people think that you're doing one thing and not the other. Because the idea of not winning or not caring if you win at the big league level is really kind of appalling. So again, this is Dave O'Brien with Craig Breslow on the broadcast about a week ago. Might have been a little bit more. Let's go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, I mean, it brings up a good point, Craig, because the way the club has played to this point, does it push you to a different level of consciousness about what's going to happen to make the team better? I imagine it does. Do you look at a starting pitcher? You look at a right-hand bat? What are you starting to look at?
Okay, so just think, the question is, boy, the team's playing better than you thought, and it must lead you to think differently about where this is going So what do you start looking at? A starting pitcher? Do you look at a right-handed hitter? What do you look at? The question is not if you add. Now that the team is in the spot, you must look at it differently. What do you add? That's the question. Listen to the answer.
Yeah, I think we're currently still evaluating. We may have been having a very different conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it's a credit to these guys who have shown up and played and shown a ton of resiliency.
Let's stop there. Okay, again, we're still evaluating. We haven't decided yet. And it would have been a different conversation 3 weeks ago because we sucked then, and we're not going to put too much emphasis on the short term. And, it's a credit to the way the guys have played. He didn't say he would add. He praises the players for playing hard and showing some toughness, some mental toughness and resiliency. But at no point does he say, I believe in them or we're going to add. Keep going, Jimmy.
Injuries, overcoming lengthy, trips on the IL, and it's a credit to these guys. Obviously, we have to figure out what lane there is to pick come the deadline. But I think there are a ton of Alex talks all the time about the great vibes around the team, and I think we're here to enjoy those and keep pushing guys forward.
Okay, so that answer, we still have to pick which lane. Alex talks about the vibes. We're here to enjoy those and go forward. Enjoy the vibes? That's what we're here to do? Enjoy the vibes? We're just playing what? Stickball or wiffle ball in the park? Enjoy the vibes? That's what it is. Don't focus on the stakes. Focus on the fun we're having. That's what the message is. Do you find this fun? Do you find this season fun? And I would say yes at points. That would be my answer. When they're winning and overachieving, that's when I find it fun. I always find the winning fun. And people I used to have this argument with people all the time. Well, we went out and played golf, or we did this, or we did that. Yeah, I sucked, but it was fun. Was it? To me, I always think the fun comes in doing something well. I don't think there's any fun in just going out there and sucking at it and getting your ass kicked. I don't think that's fun. I don't get good vibes from getting my ass kicked. Sometimes it's necessary for growth, but I'd prefer that Major League Baseball not be a place where I'm looking for good vibes. That's what the minor leagues are for. This is the one that goes up my ass. The big leagues are not a place for player development. They are for maybe a guy or two on your roster that you are trying to integrate into what is a successful winning operation. This is something the Red Sox did and used to do when they were good. They would add a veteran team that was championship caliber or expected to contend for a championship. You don't expect them to win it every year, but you do expect them to contend. So they would have that kind of team, and then they would introduce a Jacoby Ellsbury at the bottom of the lineup, or Dustin Pedroia at the bottom of the lineup, or John Lester at the back end of the rotation, and they would drop those guys in to a veteran team and let them make their mistakes at the big league level because the veterans could carry them, and all the younger guys would have to do is do their part. But when you're asking the young guys to do both, well, now again, you're developing your players at the big league level, and I'm sorry, that's Mickey Mouse. That's Tampa Bay minor league bullcrap. The big leagues in a market like Boston are not for player development. Again, a prospect here or there, and the old lesson I was taught many years ago was you want to introduce 1.5 players or add 1.5 players from your farm system every year. That might be a big ask. 1.5. So one guy comes up at the start of the season, struggles a little, finds his stride. Then by the end of the year, he's a big league regular. Halfway through the year, you bring up a guy, maybe even past the halfway point. You bring him up in July or August, get him some at-bats, familiarize him with the big leagues. And then next year, he begins the year as a starter, but he starts at the bottom of the order. There's a process. There's a assembly line. There's a product line. You get the idea. But now you have a system. but it starts with a big league team that is able to bring those guys along without putting too many expectations on them. The Red Sox are doing the opposite. Ceddanne Rafaela, Jarren Duran, Jarren Duran's been around a couple of years now, but these guys are being asked to produce and to win too much. I think the system kind of sucks, frankly. Steve in Miami. Steve, quickly, go.
Yeah, well, I'm on my way to the game right now, wearing all my Red Sox stuff. I agree with a lot of things you said. I don't know why when Cassis went down, they didn't bring in Belt, who had 17 home runs last year. Instead, they bring in Smith and Garrett. And the other thing I'm really, really, really worried about is if John Henry purchases the Celtics, will he mess that team up like he's done with the Red Sox? And yes, I appreciate what he did, bringing 4 championships, but now it's a business to him. It's not a thing that he cares about winning, it seems. Yeah. And I'm just worried.
Steve, I'm going to let you go. Let me just tell you this, okay? Because, again, I think fans are so naive about this, and I will agree that at the beginning, here's the mistake the Red Sox make. At the beginning, they wanted to win. They cared about winning. Winning that World Series, they were on a mission to do it from the very beginning. So think about it. They went out and they got Kurt Schilling. They went out and they signed Keith Folk. They tried to trade for Alex Rodriguez. They turned over. They were willing to dump Manny Ramirez and Nomar Garciaparra. They were willing to turn everything inside out and upside down in order to win. The effort that they put forth was about winning. Now they don't. So do they want to win? Yeah, sure. They don't care as much as they used to. There is no way possible they can care as much as they used to. And yet they continue to tell us, no, we still care, we want to win. Yeah, but you don't care as much as you did before. Because back then, you were the only car in the garage. Now you get about 10 of them. So, and the one you just got, the newest car is the one you love the most because you just bought it. So, they try to feed you that crap, but the fact is that their actions speak far more loudly than their words. Jimmy, do I read the Trivia Tuesday now or do I read it later after we come back? No, that's a now. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First 2 callers right now for Trivia Tuesday, 617-931-0985. Again, that's not the caller line, that's the contest line. 617-931-0985. If you can answer a Red Sox trivia question correctly or a baseball trivia question, you will get a $50 gas card presented by Gulf. They are the presenting sponsor of Trivia Tuesday. That's Trivia Tuesday. Download the Gulf Pay mobile app for every savings. Gulf, it all starts here. And I should say, again, the first 2 callers. If the first 2 callers fail, we will take 2 more. So you want to call and get on hold either way. 617-931-0985. Trivia Tuesday's next.
Sports Hub headlines.
The Red Sox kick off a 3-game set in Miami tonight with the lowly Marlins. Carter Crawford gets the start for the Sox. First pitch is just a few minutes from now. The Bruins...
This is where your baseball knowledge can lead to fabulous prizes. And now, here's your host, Tony Mazzarati.
All right, you know the drill. Every Tuesday, Trivia Tuesday, presented by Gulf. You can download the Gulf Pay mobile app for everyday savings. Gulf, it all starts here. Pretty simple concept. We look for one winner every week. We'll give you a $50 gas card if you can get the question right. I will ask you a trivia question, baseball related, often Red Sox related. If you get it right, you win. I'll put you on hold. Sit tight. Guys back there will take all your information. You'll get the gift card in the mail, and we're good to go. If you get it wrong, we bring in a second contestant. I ask a different trivia question because I don't want the person on hold to be able to then look up the answer and have it and be ready to go. As much as we want to give away that gift card, and we do, I also want to make it fair so that the second person doesn't get the answer just by listening. That wouldn't be very equitable. So, we have two contestants on the line already. If they both get it wrong, we'll invite two more people in. There is a maximum of 4 contestants per week. Again, I will change the question as we go. They might get easier. They might get harder. You just never know. It depends on my mood. Dexter in a car is our first contestant. Dexter, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is a bit of a long question, but bear with me.
Okay.
The Florida Marlins were an expansion team in 1993. Their first 4 seasons were all losing seasons. In their 5th season, 1997, the then Florida Marlins, now the Miami Marlins, but then they were the Florida Marlins, won the World Series when this player hit a walk-off single in the extra innings of Game 7. 8 years later, this same player signed with the Red Sox as a free agent. Who was he?
Edgar Renteria.
Edgar Renteria is correct. Very good, Dexter. All right. Stay right there. We're going to put you on hold. So, Dexter, get the answer correct. Jimmy, he's still there, right? I didn't hang up on him. No, I think he's there. So, Dexter, they'll take your information back there, Jimmy and Kevin Majori. I was expecting someone to flub that one, Jimmy, for some reason. That was a long time ago, 27 years ago. I didn't think someone would get that.
I'm pleasantly surprised.
I am pleasantly surprised. I was kind of hoping for a fail, if you want to know the truth, because I like talking or taking multiple callers in this particular part of the show every week. So, but good for Dexter. He got it right. He gets $50 in gas. How can you beat that? Back to your phones. Mark in Los Angeles. Mark, what do you got?
Oh, I think I got a visual analogy for how I perceive.
Oh, hold on a second, Mark. Oh, yeah, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so we got some young. The owners looked at a bunch of young guys, so they looked around, saw no one's looking, they threw the baby in the pool, and like babies do, they sink, and that's kind of what they expected. But then the baby started turning around when they started winning, and now it started swimming toward the surface, and it's starting to struggle a bit, and people are looking around, and now the owners are kind of guilty, wondering what to do. Do we pull the baby out of the water, or do we let the thing drown? And that's kind of my analogy. I think
that's yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to say that's the way I perceive the owners looking at the team this year, and this is where we're at this point.
Okay, so that one's a little dark, but I will say the concept is you want to teach someone how to swim, you can throw them in the pool and let them learn it on the fly. And there are people that believe in that sort of practice, and it is an analogy or a metaphor. But the point is, you introduce the failure. It's a great way to learn. I kind of believe in that in some ways. I just think when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar entity like the Red Sox, that is one of the most powerful brands in baseball, maybe not the most, but one of the Yankees. This is always a good metric to determine which teams have the best brand power in baseball or any sport. Look at the road attendance numbers. And you can do this in baseball probably more than any other, although certainly you could look at maybe the NBA, the NHL, something similar. But with baseball, it's always been a good way to do it. Look at the leaders in road attendance every year, and they're typically the blue blood franchises or the most historic franchises. The Giants, who had roots in New York, the Dodgers, roots in New York, the Yankees, the Cubs, who've been around forever, the Cardinals, the Red Sox. Those teams all have 100 years of history. Their fans are scattered all over the country. And when the teams go on the road, typically their fan bases travel. Oftentimes, their fan bases are already in those places. For example, for years, when the Red Sox went to California and they would play the Angels in Anaheim, there would be a huge contingent of Red Sox fans that showed up at those games. And in the American League East, when the unbalanced schedule was at its height, Red Sox fans would travel to Tampa Bay and Baltimore, sometimes even Toronto, because those trips were easier. You had a better chance of getting tickets there than you did in Boston. So that is when when you have that kind of franchise and that kind of power, I don't think you should necessarily be throwing people into the pool so that they can learn how to swim. I think you spend time giving them the lessons first at the local community pool or community center or the YMCA or wherever else. Then, when it's time to swim in the big pool, they come in and they're ready to swim. Maybe they're not ready to race, but they're ready to swim. What the Red Sox are doing now is teaching them to swim at the big league level. Boy, is that really milking this analogy for all it's worth. But this is the part that goes up my ass. If I want to see player development, I hop in my car and drive to Worcester. I can see AAA baseball there for a hell of a lot less than I could see it at Fenway Park. So what they're really asking you to do now when they put this kind of product on the field, and it is more of a player development product than they should be putting out there at the big league level, when they are doing it this way, they're saying, well, yeah, come and see the ballpark. It's a great place to come. Except that the ballpark has now been there for 112 years, and we've all been there. Many of us have, at least those of us in the area. So the point is, they're not really marketing to you anymore. They're marketing to the people, Aunt Millie up in New Hampshire, as Felger likes to say, or Aunt Judith in Vermont, or your friends and family coming down from Maine, or even Canada, or Montreal, or wherever. That's who they're marketing toward now. You don't get to see the ballpark very often. Come down to the ballpark. I've been to the ballpark plenty of times. I'm a bad example because I used to basically work there. So I've seen a crap ton of games at Fenway Park. I'm not interested in going to the ballpark anymore as a fan. Unless the team is good, then I'll happily go. And this is one I always love too, is because every time the team goes bad, people call and complain about the price of the tickets, most expensive tickets in baseball, all of which is true, and I don't begrudge any of that. I get it. It's not really what bothers you. You think it is. What you're pissed off about really is the fact that the team sucks. Because when the team is good, you'll pay to go to the ballpark, and you're really not that upset about it. And if you didn't, then I give you credit. It is about the money. So that part I get. But then the other question I ask is, do you watch them on TV? And people will say no. And at least, for my purposes, I get NESN, but I still have cable. So it's not like I pay extra, really, to get the Red Sox. But I don't watch them like I used to because they're not as compelling as they used to be. The TV ratings are not as expensive as the seat in the ballpark is. Watching them on TV is not nearly as expensive. We can agree on that. So what you're really pissed about is that they're not giving you something to watch that you want to watch and care about. I think the Red Sox have done more damage to their fan base in the last 2 or 3 years than I can remember them ever doing in 30 years of covering the team. The damage they have done to the fan base is major. So now they want to know why people are complaining about this or people are complaining about that. It's because, frankly, the team sucks, and they've been borderline negligent now for 4 years. Maybe 5 if you go back to 2019. That is a crap ton of time. You don't do the kind of damage they have done to their fan base overnight. It takes years, and they've succeeded. Matt's in Rhode Island. Matt, go ahead.
Hey, Tony, I just like to see them get back to they have drafted some good players, but I really think you got to start drafting pitchers again and developing pitchers at the minor league level. I hope they can turn around against Miami tonight. can start playing, keep this thing interesting. Thanks.
Okay, look, so the pitching thing's always been a problem for the Red Sox. They've just never really been able to develop pitching for whatever reason, draft or develop. They had one little stretch there in the 80s where they pumped out a bunch of guys at once, and actually some pretty good ones. It wasn't just Clemens. It was Clemens. It was Bruce Hurst. Bobby Ojeda was a decent pitcher for the New York Mets. John Tudor came out at that time. Took the Cardinals to the World Series one year as a 20-game winner. I can't remember if he won the Cy Young Award that year. I don't think he did. Might have been the same year that Dwight Gooden went bananas with the New York Mets. Gooden that year. Remember that year, Jimmy? What was Gooden, like 24-4 or something with the New York Mets one of those years? But the Red Sox had a stretch there in the early 80s, early to mid-80s, where they pumped out some pitchers. Otherwise, just about every guy they have had success with came in from another organization. Pedro Martinez, Kurt Schilling, Josh Beckett, Lester was homegrown. But you get the idea. Just about every guy came from out of the organization. And that was true even when Theo Epstein was here. They pumped out a couple of pitchers, Papelbon in the bullpen. But the starters, Lester, maybe Buchholz if you count him, although he never really fulfilled the potential. And then they used him as trade chips. When he went to Chicago, Theo did basically the same thing. It sort of became the model in some ways. Draft your positional players and then sign your pitchers. The problem is the Red Sox aren't signing pitchers now, and they're not developing them either. We'll wrap it up with your call, 617-779-0985, when we come back on the Baseball Hour. Wow, has his opinion changed? Can we do this again? Jimmy, play the beginning of this answer again. The one that he just gave, if we could. Ideally, it would be. So this is with Tom Caron, and this is him talking about what's going to happen at the trading deadline. Listen to this at the beginning. Go ahead.
7 weeks until the trade deadline. Still a little early for us to be asking what you're going to do. But as we sit here and you talk about 500, you've seen some glimpses of what this team can be. You've seen some frustrating glimpses as well. What does this team have to do over the next month and a half or so to really, sort of say, okay, we're adding, we're buying in, we've got something here, we're going for it? And what are the biggest determining factors behind those decisions?
Yeah, well, I think that probably circles back to the conversation we had at the opening, which is, we're trying to play meaningful baseball games down the stretch and put ourselves in a position to make the playoffs, because once you make the playoffs, anything can happen, right? It's typically a tale of who's hot, who has great starting pitching, whose bats get hot at the right time. And so we're going to look at the reality at that time when we have to make a decision that we can't reverse. And I think, whatever that is going to come into clarity based on what happens on the field.
Stop. Can we stop there? We need to make a decision based on that time, and we're going to make that decision based on what we see on the field. I'm paraphrasing. I recognize I didn't get that exact. I want to get into this more tomorrow. That's a freaking joke that he would say that. I don't want to call it a lie, but it's misleading. We're going to make that by what we see on the field? No, you won't. You're going to make that decision based on what the metrics and the analytics tell you. It has nothing to do with what you see on the field. He said that 3 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago to the deadline. Oh, what a crock that is. We're gonna base that on what we see on the field. And you notice how he said that it's going to be a decision that we can't reverse? Just letting you know it's a big decision. We're not going to do anything stupid. It's a decision we can't reverse. I want to get into this more tomorrow. That answer, and then more recently, he said, we're still evaluating. It sounded a lot more tepid. So he wanted to feed you the thing 7 weeks ago. We'll make that decision on the field based on what we see on the field or how it's played on the field. No, you won't. No, you won't. Alex Spear wrote a story in the Boston Globe that said you're going to rely on predictive analytics. That's what you're going to rely on. Oh, God, I wish they did. If they were going to decide it based on what was on the field, the last couple of weeks would have meant something. We all know they don't. Oh, they made up their mind already. They made up their mind. We all know it. If they were to make any sort of substantive move at the deadline, we'd all be pleasantly surprised. But we'd be surprised. And the idea of, the other thing is, why is it bad to make a deal at the deadline, particularly if you can bring on a guy who has term in his contract? He can help you next year, too, if you think next year is going to be the year. Because I have news for you. The pitching market this offseason, free agency, blows. It sucks. So if you're going to get pitching, now's a good time to do it, even if you are thinking for next year. See, sometimes, Jimmy, I think more clearly on this show, on the air, than I do when I'm at home.
I agree.
And I need to hear the sound. I should listen to it more at home. Felger knew it more at home. I have to actually talk it out. This was true when I covered the team, too. I'd be at the ballpark poking around, talking to people, and that's when the ideas would pop into my head. Anyway.
So you more social, Felger less social. Got it.
Something like that. Something like that. But I was able to sort of put things together after I had the conversations with people.
So tomorrow's show with Carabas is going to be outstanding.
I'm too dumb to do it on my own. Anyway, Joe Murray's got your Kevin Majori's got your headlines coming up next. Joe Murray has you for the balance of the night. We'll catch you tomorrow.